So the question for my farm, for my connected farmers, is what actually can I own in the data in my systems? Now, you all will have heard lots of people say, well, yes, we own that data. Lots of businesses are drafting agreements that say, well, person X will own this data, person Y will be able to use it on these terms. What does that actually mean? Because I'm afraid to say that I think data ownership is a bit of a myth, and it's often a combination of IP lawyers and data privacy lawyers not properly coming together and separating out intangible assets in data on the one hand, and then use rights and regulated issues on the data privacy side. So if you try and break down some of the data on this farm into the IP components, what can you get? Well, firstly, you might be looking for copyright. Now, the bad news for all of those data businesses that want to assert copyright in their database is that it's actually pretty hard to get it. You're going to need, at least on the European test, to have something which passes quite a high bar. The selection or arrangement of your database needs to be something quite magical. It needs to be the author's intellectual creation. That's the legal test that you have to meet. And I don't know about you, but if I was coming to construct a data set for how I run my farm, I'd probably do it really logically. I'd want to do it in a way that worked really easily. And that may not be sufficiently exciting. That may not be the intellectual creation that I was holding out for to get my copyright protection. Now, of course, I get copyright in my software. I get copyright in the nuts and bolts of the system that is actually running it, probably not in the algorithm, because the algorithm might be the idea behind how it works, and the software is the manifestation that gets copyright. But as you can see, copyright is not really the full answer to how you're going to protect your data. Now, those of us in the EEA, and that is some of us for at least a short period of time, will be fortunate to know that we have a database right riding to the rescue. And this is an entirely European beast created by the Database Directive. And that applies where my farmers have created something by putting a substantial investment into obtaining, verifying, or presenting my database. Now that gives me some hope in my data system. I might actually get some IP protection here because lots of people are putting a lot of effort into these systems. They're often running cross-checks against the data that's coming in. That type of investment is potentially worthy of IP protection at a European level. Of course, we don't know whether it's going to apply in the UK if and when we leave the European Union. And we also have to bear in mind that this right is under review in Europe at the moment. The Commission is saying, oh, are people really happy with how it's working? Do we need to take away or to add to what we've got? And there is even a proposal for a new data producer's right, something that you will get just by having a system that is effectively collecting the data, although my strong suspicion is that that is not going to go very far. So database right is certainly a possible for us. What about patent protection? Well, you probably won't be expecting patent protection for your data of itself. Quite right, patent protection is there for technologies which are new and innovative. It doesn't apply to business methods in Europe, but patent protection is certainly a core part of what is driving data technologies. If you want any evidence of that, you need only look at the sorts of patents that are being applied for in an Industry 4.0 space. Looking at that chart, if you just pick out maybe 3 of the big blocks, sensors, RFID chips, and cloud computing, all of the things which are driving collection of data in a connected world, and then the processing of that data. And that is starting to be a heavily patented space, as you can see from the bar chart at the bottom, particularly from Chinese businesses. Now, these figures are slightly skewed. They're based on top 10 patentees for patent families for each of those categories. And actually, a lot of the Chinese applications are only in China, and they are also part of a big program from Chinese universities to increase protection in this space. But what you're really starting to see is quite a patent thicket around Industry 4.0, around connected devices. It's quite important for data privacy lawyers as they're starting to look at all of the different angles in connected systems to actually question whether a particular use case is even going to be permitted from an IP perspective, because you might be walking into someone else's patent. I bring us back then to our menu of IP rights, and really the one which can also kind of help to fill some gaps here is the law of trade secrets and confidential information. Now, that's not the same in every country across the EU. We have a trade secrets directive to thank for a bit of extra harmonization coming in June 2018. And that's basically a copy, at least in part, of the main international IP treaty on trade secret protection. It says that we should give this protection to things which are secret, where they are commercially valuable because they are secret, and where some reasonable efforts have been undertaken in order to keep them secret. Now, I can imagine that one data point from one of our cows is not going to cut it as a trade secret. Even when I combine it with what the farmer's up to, that is probably not going to rock anyone's world. But when I'm putting together all of the data from my farm in rural Cambridgeshire, I'm combining it with my network of farms across the world, I'm actually then plugging in some information that I got about the weather, maybe something about the retail chain, that collection starts to be quite important. That might be the difference between my milk going off and actually everyone getting the same consistent dairy product at the end of the day from my farm. So I do hold out some hope for trade secret protection in this space, although there is a fair amount of academic commentary out there about how large connected systems that are open to the world, frankly, are not great for trade secret protection because the point is sharing. So you're going to have to work out where the boundaries of your walled garden might be if you are designing your connected system and if you want it to attract as much trade secret protection as possible.